Hey, what is up everybody? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm talking about the biggest upgrades I've ever made to my gravel bike. It's been through a lot of iterations since before I had it, and since I've had it, and these ones have changed it the most. Have changed out the levers and the bars, the cranks, the bottom bracket, the cassette, and the way the cassette is set up. Most importantly, the brakes. So starting with the brakes, I got those Growtech Equals that Velo Orange has been selling, and they're mechanical disc brakes, and they have just been amazing. I was coming from TRP Spires that were original to this 2014 bike. I don't think they were ever all that great to begin with, but mine were especially worn and wouldn't stay tight. So this upgrade has just been amazing. A couple of the awesome things about the brakes, they come in different anodized colors. Aesthetics with brakes are obviously something that's very subjective, but I really think the Growtech Equals look awesome. I went with a blue on this bike because there's some blue touches, and I really think it looks cool. I ordered silver for the gunner build. You'll see that down the road in a little bit. They have awesome modulation. Some of the reviews on the Velo Orange website compare them to hydros. I've only ridden hydros a couple times. They were some of the best brakes I've ever been on, but there is an amazing amount of modulation with these brakes, more than I've ever felt in anything that I've personally owned. They also set up very easily. I did have them put on at Dirty River Bicycle Works by their mechanic Yonda while I filmed some of the footage, and he was really impressed with the setup and how easy they installed. And since then, they've been really easy to adjust when needed as the pads wear a little bit and the cable stretch thing happens. They also feel like they actuate almost instantly. As soon as you pull the lever, you know, it's moving, everything is great. And they also are a really good value. So I think the closest thing anyone compares them to is Paul Clampers. You get both of these brakes in the post mount for $390. It comes with mountain bike cables, road cables, compressionless housing, flexi housing, all the ends and the stuff you need to mount the rear brake. And then, you know, you might need to get your own adapter. So really, if you do need to change an adapter and then you're going to change your discs, that should be the only thing you need that's not in the box. So when you look at that, it's not cheap by any means, but for a brake of this level, it's actually, I think, a pretty good value and a pretty decent deal. I know Russ on Pathless Pedaled said they're the most powerful mechanical disc brakes you can get. I've heard other people still say it's clampers, but regardless, with the value proposition there, these are the brakes I'm going to go with. Nothing against the Pauls, they're great brakes too. They're just considerably more expensive. So I've had the chance to test these things out in all kinds of conditions, put them on in the fall, and then I did Higher Ground Hundo in Johnstown, PA, which had some really gnarly gravel and road descents, and I was amazed by them then. And later I was riding in New York City where you need to be on top of what you're doing, and Nutmeg out in Connecticut, and then just all the gnarly industrial gravel stuff we do around here. So yeah, just can't recommend these brakes enough. I mean, not sponsored, got them from my local bike shop, paid for them. I just love them. Like I said, love them enough to order another set, and I haven't seen really any negative comments yet about these brakes anywhere. The next biggest upgrade to this bike were these Carver All-Road titanium handlebars. They're absolutely amazing. When I was getting the bike reset up and I was getting new levers put on, I was looking at the bars they had at Dirty River and I was thinking, you know, it's time for a change. I do like the shape of the old bars I have, but they also were really thick and they were really stiff. Yonda pointed out these Carver All-Road bars, and they're titanium, and they're not cheap. They were $249. They're not in stock anywhere right now, but I know Dirty River is hoping to put in an order for some more Carver frames and then order some bars along with them. But the things I really love about these bars are that they're really flexy. Like they add so much compliance, suspension feeling to the bike. I had never felt that. So again, like I mentioned, like riding Higher Ground Hundo and Nutmeg and doing gnarly descents, and just how much easier it is on your arms to get the flex out of something like these titanium bars. I also like the width. They're a little wider than what I had, which is nice for controlling your bike in those off-road situations, but also because I often run bags like Swift Zeitgeist in the bars, and it just gives more room for those side pockets. The other thing I really dig about these bars is that they have a flare, but the flare is after the drop, which it's just a personal thing, but I just never like the sideways diagonal levers. I really can't stand it. So this, you get the benefit of having that wider hand position without the look of those like crazy tilted bars, like, you know, what cow chippers and whatever. And the drops also come back really far, which kind of offers a whole nother hand position. I think it's 31/8 bar, and they do come with a shim if you need it. But yeah, just I can't talk about them enough. Nothing has ever changed the feel of my bike that much. You know, being able to stop with the brakes is really nice, but the actual feel of the bike has been transformed by these bars, and I couldn't be happier with them. On the bars, I had a problem with one of my levers, and channel friend, personal friend, Pudgy Pedal Pusher, was able to sell me some Ultegra 11-speed levers. I had 105. I have to say, you know, the one lever wasn't working, so they needed to be upgraded. I'm surprised that I haven't really noticed a difference. The shifting action feels about the same. The shape of the lever feels about the same. I'm sure I shaved off a couple grams. I'm not a weight weenie, but titanium bars and slightly lighter levers, you know, nothing to complain about there, but they didn't really have any real noticeable effect. Unlike with 9-speed Shimano stuff, where I feel like 105 to Ultegra and Dura-Ace, there's a totally different feel to the shifting, whereas 105 was always really clicky, and Ultegra and then Dura-Ace especially are super smooth. The difference between, you know, 11-speed 105 and Ultegra, I just can't really tell, but I'm glad to have new functional levers on this bike. Couple other quick upgrades that are, you know, not a big deal. I got a bottom bracket. They had a bunch in stock. I went with the Dura-Ace one because the cost wasn't that different. So again, I think you only really notice your bottom bracket when it's not working and something's wrong. And then I also got a new 105 crankset, which I already, pretty much the same thing I had. I just had it in silver, which I really liked better on this bike. But, you know, this was still last fall and things were, you know, still a little behind. And I didn't want to wait for the silver ones to come in. But again, no real difference there between that little combination up front. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know I got hit by a car and it actually caught my foot and hit the pedal. It completely bent the non-drive side crank arm. Even when I replaced that though, there was always something that was a little off. So getting the new crankset and the new bottom bracket should, or have, fixed that problem and everything is running straight and true. In the rear, the cool thing we got is I was running an 1134 cassette, and I think one time on this bike I had an 1136, but even though that's a pretty good range, you know, still with the road double from Shimano, it was still a little limited. There were still times when I had to put a foot down on super steep stuff. We were able to add a wolf tooth Road Link DM, which dropped down my 105 derailleur, and I'm able to fit a 42 cassette on this bike now. So having that 34-42 has made such a huge difference. So just as I was saying when I was at like higher ground descending on these great bars, when we were climbing some super gnarly steep hills that had like, you had to be choosing your line and we're going on forever, to have that 34-42 was such a game changer. I always thought 1-to-1 was enough for me, 34-34. I'm like, that's everything I would ever need. I've done a number of rides since I've had this on here where I've been like, oh no, I am so thankful to have this. And then like out at Nutmeg when we were actually bike packing. So the bikes were weighted down and then we were doing some steep gnarly climbs just to have those easy gears. And around here, even though I always got by with the 34-34, I find that I'm using that 42 a lot. So takes a little pressure off the knees, spin a little faster. I'm not getting any younger, so it's a great addition to this bike and another thing that really changed the way it feels. Yeah, so all in all, some big upgrades to the 2014 Tamland 2. It's not the most common bike, so if you're not really familiar with it, I would compare it to an All-City Space Horse. A lot of people have that bike, very similar geometry. A thing I changed about a year ago is I was able to get a deal on a carbon fork, and so put that on here. I don't think carbon forks are definitely necessary, but the fork that came with this bike is just a boat anchor. It was just super heavy and not very compliant, so I wasn't really getting the benefit of the raked fork. I really loved the way it looked on this bike. Some people were like, thought this bike was much more vintage than it was because of its vibe, which totally suits me, but it was noticeable to put the carbon fork on this bike. It was a noticeable change in the road clatter on like, you know, some, you know, that vibrations. It definitely dampens them, and it did feel lighter right off the bat. So the other upgrade, I just got some new Renair's Hurricane Ridge 42 millimeter tires put on this bike. That's about what it clears comfortably. So 42 is kind of the max here. It's not like a lot of the modern gravel bikes where you could fit a much wider tire. So I could up front, and maybe I will next time around. But either way, I love those tires. Just got them set up tubeless, and they're just my favorite tires because, like I said, I'm rolling through New York City and they don't feel like they're slowing me down. but then they're giving me that traction when we're riding like some gnarly off-road stuff. So that's about it. It really does feel like this has become a new bike. I love the looks. I like the aesthetics of this old Raleigh, and now it just has like all those little pieces that have really made it come together. I'll link the earlier video I did on this bike where I get a little more into the history of it, the history of Raleigh and all that stuff. It shows the build that I had, and so then any other components I haven't mentioned that are still on here will be mentioned in that video. But besides that, that's it for now. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.